search of the 3 missing Montgomery College students continues in Frederick County.
And I got to play with your wand. It was great.
Definitely fun.
Keep going. Sorry, Mickey. I know it's got to be weird. I know it's 2025 and podcasts are kind of this new like media. I mean, new as in like 3 decades old.
Right.
But it's kind of like an unvetted Wild West. So I can only imagine that being a competent artist and just getting thrown to the wolves, like, you don't know who the hell we are. This could be a nightmare.
But I looked it all up.
Oh no, I'm sure that helped. I'm sure, but I love to catch guests off guard right up top, just to let you know, like, you're in good hands. It won't get any worse than that. For a little bit of context, for the audience out there listening, Terrell's not with us today. Mickey dodged a bullet there. He's at work, so it's just gonna be me and Evan. And I just wanted to kick this off with kind of framing how you ended up trapped here with us, Mickey. And whenever we book people, we have too many personalities on a show that we try to cram into an hour every week. And me and Terrell usually get our way. But Evan, who's kind of like, you know, he's third chair and a producer. He does a lot of our IT work. He usually just goes with the flow. But when we had an opportunity to talk to you, I think it's been 3 weeks, Evan has been hounding us to make this work. And just for a little bit of context, it's not like we're like, no, I've seen his movies. Like, fuck that, dude. Our film fest just happened. Mm-hmm. So this is our first interview back. And to everybody listening, I know we're not going found footage, and we have a ton of guests that we booked and hung out with. They'll be coming, but we had to get Mickey in here. Otherwise, Evan was threatening violence. So
yeah, hell yeah.
So if you could kick it off, Evan, and like, what's your history with this filmography? I'm personally curious here.
You know, yeah, I think the first movie, it's funny because the first movie I ever saw that you did was Darling, and I'm still due for a rewatch because the first time I watched Darling, I was like, I don't know if I like this.
Yeah,
and
great way to have a guest on.
Well, it's the I feel like he's heard this. It's the pacing of the, like, it's just it's different. And I don't think I was ready to engage with it on the movie's terms when I watched it. You know what I mean? Like, it was a me thing. I don't think it was a movie thing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, fuck, but there's so much, like, good filmmaking and stuff here. I want to see what else this guy's done. And I watched Carnage Park right after, and I was like, oh, I really fucking like this. And then I went back and watched Pod, and I liked it. And then Offseason was, like, about to come out around that time. Mm-hmm. And we talked about it. I did a podcast previously called Void Video, and we talked about Offseason on there. And that was sort of my co-host was way into it, too. And that was my, I don't know, first time, like, just really, like, digging into the sort of, like, interviews with you and stuff about the movie was with Offseason. Like, I hadn't listened, because the other movies I just watched them, I hadn't listened to you talk about them and all, but it was cool kind of hearing your backstory and how you pull different things from genre films, and you sort of take all these different elements of different styles of horror and experiment with them and change them up for your movies. And that's why I really want to go back now and watch Darling, because I think if I went into it expecting like a Polanski, Hitchcockian, like surreal slow burn, like, I think I would fuck with it. And I just wasn't in the headspace for it. And then I heard that Invader was coming out recently. And I think Elizabeth had sent over an email, just like a random, you know, I got the PR email for it. And I was like, oh shit, Mickey's got a new movie and Joe Swanberg's in it. Cause I'm a big Swanberg fan. I love like mumblecore. Any kind of movies where it's just about people talking about their feelings, I'm fucking into it. So, and so I saw he was in it, and it's also like sort of different than what he's been doing and what he's done in the past. So I was like, oh, I really am excited to see this, and it didn't disappoint.
Cool.
I don't know if you listened to the episode where I reviewed it, but I gave it a glowing review.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. No, you know, it's so funny when the movies come out, I kind of like shield myself and hide, you know, because basically it's like, there it is out in the world, but I'll go back and I'll listen to it because I appreciate that.
Hell yeah. Yeah. But I really like what you do with like genre and stuff. And my co-host had not, I don't know if Terrell's seen any of them. Has he seen any of Mickey's movies, Russell?
Evan, you know, I put you up top and I was really hoping you're working towards a question there, but
I am working towards a question. I have questions, but And I was so the other movies. This one feels more. I talked about Darling has sort of a Polanski feel, and Carnage Park has this sort of 70s kind of grindhouse, like almost Toby Hooper, like Texas Chainsaw vibe to it. And with Invader, it's very much stylistically like a lot of handheld and a lot of like abrupt cuts and things like that. But the editing is very like fast paced and different than your other stuff. So I just want to, I guess, kick it off by asking you, like, what sort of inspired the shooting style and just the way this movie looks? Because it's very different than the rest of your stuff, and it's almost counterintuitive. It felt like when I was watching it, to like the beginning is like really fast cuts when slower things are happening, and you do longer takes when faster stuff is happening. And I really liked that sort of.
Cool.
You switched it up a bit.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, the initial idea of Invader, it came, pretty quickly after we made Offseason, and Offseason was so like composed, right, and still. And so I really wanted to make like an ugly movie, and like I'd been watching a lot of documentaries at that time, and so it really was an effort. Like, I was really into like Louis Theroux documentaries. I rewatched that set, like just that kind of like naturalism was really interesting to me. So the effort was to just be like, and also from a production standpoint, Joe called me up, and, I've been a fan of Joe's forever, like, back, since college. And he called me up and he's like, why don't, we made Offseason, I made your kind of movie. Why don't we go make my kind of movie? So already that like was the challenge of being like, all right, I know that if there's going to be a tiny crew, then we kind of have to design a movie to shape that, right? Like if Invader wouldn't have worked on like dolly tracks and cranes and shit like that, like it just wasn't in the DNA. Yeah. So it was really a fun challenge to throw all the tools out and be like, let's make something like aggressively ugly, right? Because I also think like, that's not in this generation and day and age of making movies, it's cheaper and easier than ever to make something cinematic, and so much horror feels like it's auditioning to be, it's like the director's calling card to do a studio horror film. And I kind of wanted to go the opposite way with that, like make something that was just like off-puttingly visual in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because it does, even though there is a lot of shaky cam and quick cuts, which I don't mean that in like a negative way. I think it feeds into the kind of voyeuristic like nature of the movie's like perspective on everything. Mm-hmm. But you still, I don't know, you like retain your focus and pull back and forth on things really quickly and cleanly, even though the camera's moving a lot. So I think there is still a lot of craft on display, even though you're calling it ugly. I don't know if I think that's the right word.
Well, let me tell you, I've worked with the same camera team for 10 years now at this point. And the first assistant camera, who is, I think he's the greatest focus puller working today. He was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna have to take my name off this movie. There's things bugging in and out, and like I can't believe it." But I just kept reassuring him. I was like, "That's good," like, because when you the great William Friedkin quote that I love was how he talked about, like, if a cameraman is setting up Fidel Castro walking into the room, they're not going to ask Fidel Castro to do that again, right? So you got to get it in one way. And that's kind of like, that was what I wanted to do with this movie. It was that effort.
Okay.
We're filming, something for the first time, but David's just a master camera magician. So, I think he'll take a compliment from you saying that.
Awesome.
Dude, Mickey, we literally had an argument. So my history with your filmography is, I've been podcasting for a long time, and I'm a contrarian. Mm-hmm. And all of my kind of like highbrow A24 homies, they love you.
Oh, cool.
So I almost had to go to war with you, having never watched the movie. And it put me in like an interesting position because, I mean, if I'm being honest, and don't tell the audience of this show, but I'll watch anything. Mm-hmm. The only thing I want is somebody excited there. Yeah. So I kind of just let Evan take me by the hand, and we did a double feature, and we watched Invader and Ritual.
Whoa.
And he had never seen Ritual before, in that order.
Jesus.
And So that's funny. What Ritual doesn't sit well with you now, or
No, well, it's funny. It's just that like when I made that movie, it was like a little kid, right? Like, and I've made so many films between that I honestly haven't gone back and looked at Ritual for like, God, like years now at this point. So I don't know. That's just a very shocking kind of like way to view the filmography.
well,
You were in your 20s, right?
I was
when you made that?
22 when I made Ritual.
God damn it.
Yeah.
That's how if you're out there and you're farting around your 30, you're like, I'm going to make a movie one day. Go look at Ritual
Yeah.
and then try and make a movie and just realize how competent that fucking film is. Mickey, I kind of, it's one of those things where you get mad and you're like, dude, I know if I ever like put my money where my mouth was and went out and made a movie, it wasn't going to look like that. So here I'm brand new I'm brand new and I'm a community college educated film 101 historian. And I love the auteur theory.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at your brand new film and your first film, I'm already trying to connect the dots and figure you out as like a filmmaker.
Cool.
And my 2 cents on that conversation would be that you're a director that is a fan of the genre. You don't run from it or try and like, I don't want to say reinvent it, but I think that you wear your influences pretty proudly. Mm. And even with Invader, I just think the influences that I pulled changed a little bit. But so often in like 2025, like we're in like the content era. Like people don't, it used to be film and movies. Now it's content. And we have new cable that's streaming. And there's so many like filmmakers who almost seem without influence. Like we're kind of like in a deep genre meditation.
Yeah.
And I want to pick your brain about genre because so Ritual, which is a fantastic film. And I believe, how did we watch it, Evan? It was on Vudu with ads.
Yeah, with ads. Yeah.
So I definitely recommend, despite Mickey's hesitation, that y'all go watch it. There's kind of like a 50s vibe going on here. Again, I haven't talked to Mickey about this, so this is just me guessing. But we're doing a little bit of a David Lynch thing. There's a lot of John Carpenter that peeks through. And unlike a lot of directors who kind of imitate without exploring, you do the thing I like in genre where it's you like, hey, I'm going to make a slasher film. Let's do something a little bit different. Mm. Like we're not going to try and subvert tropes. We're just going to explore them differently.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what your approach to Invader was. I mean, the title alone set me up for a home invasion film, but how do you see that film in like horror genre 2025?
Geez, that's a great question. I don't know. I think, where that kind of came from and what was really fun about Joe, what I love about Joe is that, I'm just from my basic DNA, like every single like cell of me is movies, right? And movie references.
Yeah.
And I just love, it's all I've ever liked. It's my only focus. I don't have any other hobbies, anything. And what's really interesting about Joe is that he's also a huge cinephile, but I could tell every single time I would like bring up a movie reference while we first started talking about Invader, I could see like him go blank a little bit, right? Because he comes from a place of wanting to find something wholly new and original just through like romantic comedies or things like that. So that was like a really already great, fun challenge. And I think, but from fundamentally, like no matter what, as a film fan, things are just going to instinctually come through. So what I started thinking about with Invader was like a twofold thing where, back the movies that like for like middle school and high school for me that were really like influential in terms of horror were like a lot of them were those, extreme 2000s horror movies where it'd be like an American going to some Middle East or some Eastern European country or somewhere and getting fucked up. Right. And I always thought like, well, it's especially in where what's going on in the country one way or another, like coming here isn't necessarily like the great, like idyllic La La Land idea of what visiting America could be anymore. And so maybe we should try to flip that on its head and do, the equivalent of like, something that you would see in the 2000s, but coming and bringing it to our turf, which I thought was really fun and exciting. And then, also, I mean, when Joe called me to do the movie, when I was in college, my then girlfriend, now wife, and we made this like 50-minute horror movie because I wanted to impress Larry Fessenden at Glass Eye Pix, and I wanted, to try to convince him to like finance a movie of mine. That never happened, but that was kind of like the inception. It basically was like a girl gets kicked out of her apartment in New York and then goes to like visit a friend in New Jersey, and then just like it's basically the plot of Invader. But we added the twist of like coming to visit America. So those were like kind of the two jumping off points for the film.
So,
did you Russell, you brought up home invasion films though, and it's funny that you did, because in my notes, and all the line says is post home invasion film, because I don't think we've ever seen, like, I love The Strangers. I think that's like an early aughts like masterpiece, and it's almost like you don't see the home invasion, you see the aftermath of the home invasion in this, which is an interesting. Like, I don't think I've ever seen that sort of structure with a home invasion type film.
I mean, because I love home invasion movies with the best, like, and I love The Strangers, and but it's like, how many times can you do that movie with, and you're never gonna top The Strangers, and like even like You're Next, which is so highly like stylized and fun, which is like a great twist on it. I always, it's like it's always first and foremost about trying to at least find things that are familiar to me that I want to be like excited by or challenged by, and think like, if I have never seen, or I've always wanted this from like The Strangers or something, or like those poor kids at the beginning of The Strangers, they're the ones who walk into the whole shit, and like
the little missionaries.
Yeah, that could be a whole movie in and of itself. So that's kind of just like fun to kind of push the boundaries. Sometimes it works, sometimes people get really mad about it, but that's the effort.
So Your Next is kind of one of the high marks, I think is fair to say, for home invasion.
For sure.
Now, Swanberg was a part of that. So when you bring him into your movie, was there anything he like steered you away from? Like, nah, we already did that, or...
No, I think because the conversation was that we knew from the beginning it was going to be so different. He did say the only comparison that we had was I asked him while he's in the suit, which he was incredibly uncomfortable, just physically hated it. I said, "Is this the worst costume you've ever worn in a movie?" And he said, "No, because in Your Next, I had to spend days with that arrow in my back and covered in blood, and that was by far the worst costume I've ever had." So I was like, "Great, perfect."
Oh man! So when I was looking at your film and trying to get into your head, I had 3 references that I thought like were maybe minor homage or maybe had seeped into your brain while making it. But I'm just curious how close I am to stuff that is important to you. And the 3 movies, this is the weirdest like inspiration I've ever like pondered about somebody. But I had Vertigo, of course. I'm sorry. Actually, it would probably be more Vertigo. Because Hitchcock definitely felt like a part of that. I was kind of back and forth with Strangers on the Train. But Strangeland, the Dee Wallace movie, or the Dee Schneider movie, and then Predator 2. And I'm curious, like, does that triangulate?
What the fuck?
So Predator, I'll point that one out because there's a moment, I don't know why, of all the things in Predator 2 that really stuck in my brain, is when the Predator's in the bathroom and he's like applying first aid to himself. And it really like rang through in this movie. So how close? What do I get of a grade here?
Well, I mean, if I'm being honest, I didn't think about that, but I will, of course, forever take that. Strangeland is a funny one. I hadn't watched that until it was on Tubi, I think, and then like a couple months ago, I watched it again because I always remember the cover from Best Buy. But Vertigo, I suppose. When it comes to like the idea of like obsession and exploration, there could be elements of that there. But no, I mean, I love, it's so funny because like I love hearing people's interpretations of like where the inspiration possibly could have come, because who knows, maybe I've seen all those films and somewhere maybe the synapse like went off in my brain and I went back to Predator 2 for for the bathroom. Anything's
Well,
possible, right? All art inspires art.
So you're a film fan. How big is Hitchcock in your like brain?
I mean, he's not like you can't escape it, right? And it's really funny.
Yeah.
The other night, this weekend, we were hanging out. It was late, and we were like, let's just turn on Psycho again. Why not? And literally, I was just like sitting there, just like flabbergasted by. And then you always have that conversation where you're like, why is this movie? Even it's black and white of this time period. It's it's the production was cheap. Like, why does this movie transcend? There are hundreds of movies like that at that time. But then, like, you watch like the editing and the rhythm and how he cuts things and how he shoots things just meticulously that are just different enough that I think that's always been kind of like ingrained in my sensibility. Because like even that conversation in the back room in Psycho when she's eating the sandwich, the way that the camera cuts, it's not just a traditional two-shot. It's these very strange off-kilter like angles, and the rhythm of the edit is so fast that you're just like, man, this is like why he's the greatest, right? So in the world of like my directorial inspirations, like he's not on Mount Rushmore because I think he's basically surpasses that, but always an inspiration to some degree or another.
It's funny. It's not the pacing that stuck out to me. Like I'm also like a huge Hitchcock fan, and like me and Evan, we work on the Unnamed Footage Festival, which we only program in-world camera stuff. So it's all found footage horror, faux documentary, POV. And whenever I'm talking about like early kind of like genre influence, like everybody goes Blair Witch, it's an easy spot. But I like to direct people to Rear Window and kind of get them in the conversation that like we as an audience are like voyeuristic. And with your camera, the handheld, which again, me and Evan got into an argument about if the shaky cam was done in post or if you had a focus puller. And Evan, who won that argument?
I don't remember. Okay,
yeah, of course, it's me.
Was I wrong?
I was like,
Did
no,
you
definitely
win?
that was all.
That's probably why I don't remember it. Because if I lose arguments, I tend to forget them.
Believe me, if it wasn't because there were times where we watched it in the theater, and I like looked over at my wife because my wife edits my movies, and I looked over, and I was like, oh man, maybe we should have tried to stabilize something here. So that's all natural.
Well, it almost felt like, because it's a home invasion film, it almost felt like we were looking through somebody's POV.
Yeah.
Like there was like a third party about to pop in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do remember this because the reason I thought that it was done in post is because of the focus pulling. Because I'm like, how'd they keep these people in focus and shake the camera? Like the shake had to be added, right? But it's, again, compliments to your DP because he fucking crushed it.
Yeah. It's fun, and I'm glad that you guys brought that up because that was another effort. Was to be. I like the idea of like interactive cinema, right? And like the idea of like, especially when they start going into that house where the camera kind of becomes ducking and pulling and looking around, and I think that like is something that I'm going to continue to explore even more because it's just one of my favorite films of all time is called Punishment Park, which is what and like that is a total example of like you're watching it, you're like they're running through and with these hippies getting shot at, but the camera is is a character. Certainly, like that was one of the inspirations in terms of like the immersiveness of Invader.
Well, it's funny because even though, we're used to having a camera crew, like the one rule to get into our film fest is the production has to be part of the movie. Like it has to be in-world camera.
Yeah.
And your film, it felt like we were looking through the eyes of somebody, but we're not. So it kind of, that's where my Hitchcock theory came from, is that he was so hyper aware of the audience that would be watching his movie and how they feel and how things will play. Like with the birds, he was like, the movie's called The Birds and they don't show up till the third act. Yeah. So that's why you get like playground covered in birds. And it's just him being like, they're coming.
Right.
I know you bought a ticket. Yet in your film, it was like you did that classic, I don't speak the language, or maybe I do. The audience doesn't really know. Like we're kind of learning about our protagonist as we're watching her deal with problems. And man, it's a captivating way to carry somebody through a story. I'm curious, why in Chicago? Are you located out of there?
No, I'm in sunny Hollywood, California, but
All right.
Chicago specifically because Joe lives there, and he has he producers that have produced his last few movies, like Happy Christmas and Win It All. They're from there, and that's how I met Eddie Linker, who produced this one. So yeah, I'd never been there before. I like maybe once when I was like very young, but that was kind of, a fun challenge too, because, you're filming it for the first time ever, like trying to like explore the way that she would. And yeah. And going back to your point about like, being aware of like the audio, there was a moment when he turns on the record player and starts smashing shit at the end of the movie, where we shot that he actually goes over to the camera and starts shaking the camera, like breaks the fourth wall. But then we decided like at that moment there would be more questions for the audience than we wanted to present at this like moment of intensity. But yeah, there was we have like a deleted scene where he literally is grabs hold of the camera and starts shaking it.
That's rad.
Here's the thing, for like an audience like us, we like highbrow, lowbrow film, like highbrow filmmaking in like lowbrow subject matter. And I think when you have Swanberg with the sledgehammer destroying a kitchen, you kind of grab both audiences there.
Right.
So it was a fantastic way to open it up.
They're like, what kind of breakup is he going through,
Oh, dude. I didn't know. I was like, wait, what is the movie we're watching? I don't even know where we go from here.
Good.
But Chicago as a backdrop, like at first I thought we were in LA. Like it just kind of looked like it to me. And it's kind of safe to just assume most like independent horror movies are shot in LA.
Right.
But man, the way you framed the houses was one of my favorite part of this, where you have like these exterior shots and they're almost like, are you familiar with the photographer Todd Hito?
No.
I think. Oh, don't kill me, photography fans. He gives character to like imagine you're standing in the middle of a street and you take a picture of a home on a kind of foggy night, and there's like a couple windows lit up, and that's like it. A lot of it is in the color grade and everything, but it gives a character to the home. And I thought it was an interesting way to like give sympathy to like a home being invaded.
Yeah.
By people who are mostly neutral to the home.
Right.
Except I guess in the beginning when he's destroying the kitchen. But how was it like dealing with the character of Chicago? Like, were you doing a lot of location scouting, or did you have an idea of what you wanted it to look like from the very beginning?
Yes. So Eddie, our producer, he is pretty ingrained in the film production scene in Chicago. So from the film commission sent us like months in advance, they sent us locations, like a big package. And then that house it looks almost identical to the house from that little student film that we had made. So I was like, where is this? Like, how far? And unfortunately, it's, a 45-minute drive out of where everyone was staying in the heart of Chicago. But it just like visually was so captivating that I really needed to like film there. And it was a rentable house. So nobody showed up when they saw how absolutely destroyed it was. And then like, basically we would kind of like walk around that neighborhood and just film things that were interesting. So it was great to shoot in Chicago because during that time, I mean, it was during the shutdown. Still like things were just starting to open back up. So that little like tunnel train station was just like empty because no one was commuting. So you're like, let's just go film an entire scene down in that tunnel because we, can do it. No one's going to hassle us. We did on the very, very, very last night, get boxed in. It's when Joe is running and he's covered in blood and he's, dressed like a cop. And we were driving around and like, we had rented a fake, like a movie prop car. And I guess like the neighbors at that point were just like annoyed because like there was screaming and it was like there were big lights and there was like the last shot of the movie. And we just got boxed in by two, different cop cruisers and they jumped out. And I was like, it was like, 8:30 at night on like a Saturday. So I was like, oh my God, we're going to go to jail right now. And then like, and so they were just kind of like, they had the police station knew about it, but I think they were just, nothing else was going on. So like, it was like, what's all the fuss about? And so Eddie, the producer, came running and talked him down. But like, that was the only kind of like moment where I was like, wow, Chicago isn't the dreamland I thought it would be. But no, I loved shooting there. And I've shot another movie there since.
You know,
hold on, did you get any production value out of them pulling up?
No, because we were done. The camera was off. It was me and Edgar who was shooting, and then the two, Joe covered in blood, dressed like a cop, and then the other actor dressed like a cop. And I'm like, we did it, boys. We're done. And then, immediately. But, it's like when you have like a $300,000 camera in the backseat of the car, like, and big lights on the outside of the car. It's not like we were driving around like fucking with people or anything. So
yeah,
right.
It de-escalated, but yeah, I wish. Yeah, I should have asked them to be in the movie, and then they would have been like, get in the paddy wagon.
Well, no, it's funny that you're talking about the getting in trouble element here, because I was watching, you did an interview with Fright Fest TV, and you were talking about how you're a control freak with making these movies, and that this one put you out of your comfort zone.
Definitely.
Like you guys didn't have permits, and you were kind of doing this run and gun style that, is sort of Swanberg's like bread and butter, it seems like, but is not like something you were super comfortable with, like in terms of the working environment. So talk about that a little, and just like, what was that? Because you interned right at Blumhouse when you were young, so your background is more probably in professionally structured shoots versus just running around doing shit.
So, I mean, I think I might be a little bit like, obviously it's like we never, on this movie, we didn't go and like, because I made enough movies at this point that and I've kind of like aged out of like the, hey, mister, we're making a movie, don't, like, so I knew that I couldn't like pretend to be a film school student or something. So it was more about, like, where we needed to film. The only time that we got like a ticket was because we decided to film those woods that the taxi driver confronts her at. Like, we were like, oh, those are cool woods over there, let's go shoot there. And like, we didn't know, so like the producer got ticketed for that. But other than that, I mean, it was pretty we didn't do anything that like we knew that we could potentially get in trouble for, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But where my kind of like sense of control kind of went out the window was that, I storyboard, like Offseason, I drew the entire movie and edited the entire film on storyboards with music and dialogue and everything before we shot a frame of it, right? And this movie was very purposeful in its sense, where I was like, I'm not going to shot list anything. And if we decide to go film over there today, let's go do it. Let's drive around. Let's find those abandoned buildings that she walks by, and let's just do it. And so that kind of like put me out of my element, but it was really fun because your instincts kick in, right? And then if there is like an unintentional like homage to something, it wasn't really planned, so it feels more spontaneous in that way. And so so I enjoyed doing it, but like in terms of the spontaneity, like we cast Vero and Colin like 4 days before we filmed the movie, and so, like that was like, a whole new world and experience for me doing. And so, so it was those little elements like that. I didn't mean to like position it like we were just like completely just throwing the rules out the window,
Sure. Yeah. And maybe I worded it a little, but I think you said it a little more, professionally than I probably just worded it.
Well, dude, Mickey, that's so impressive. Your film, like when I'm talking about like highbrow, lowbrow, usually it's people who just understand the medium that they're working in and they understand the art, or maybe they're just a good manager, which, that part of the director role is usually something that we're not like patting people on the back for, like, hey, good way to work that budget.
Yeah.
But
right.
when you're like driving around, you're in a new city, you don't know where you're shooting, but you're just kind of like fucking rolling with it.
Yeah.
like how do you plan a shoot like that? Do you have a day where you're like, oh, today we're going to get some shots of her walking through the neighborhood?
Yeah. Because like, so the nice thing about Invader is it's very linear, right? Like it's a super linear plot. You know, she's getting from that bus station to the house, and there's going to be a showdown,
Right.
And so so we basically kind of gave ourselves. The first week was just, you know, basically the exploration and looking for the cousin and like meeting. And we had a lot of like leeway with stuff like, and the nice thing was like a lot of where we shot, everything was kind of in the vicinity of the house that we could use as a home base. And then the next week we plotted out for the whole, you know, showdown, everything like that. So it was kind of like a freestyle idea of like, you know, you're just like a kid in a candy store, like this, let's go walk across this bridge, you know? And there's a lot of like,
Yep.
the first cut of the movie was like 90 minutes long because there was just a ton of her just like walking around crazy, fucking, you know, like abandoned parts of Chicago, but we had to cut it down. And then like the opening of the movie where he's destroying the house, we didn't like the day before the last day of shooting, Eddie was like, I've got a friend who is going to bulldoze this house. Do you want to do anything there? Maybe like another movie. And we were like, no, let's just go tomorrow and let's just film Joe killing the house. And that could be the opening of the film. So
Hell yeah.
There's a lot of little magical moments like that.
So hold on, Evan. So the comparison from your first film to this film, I couldn't help but speculate that with Ritual, it's a 90-minute movie.
Yeah.
And it feels very like when you make a feature, you make a 90-minute movie.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like in-world camera elements there that you're not going to get away from. I know we're winding down, but you will have to answer for that. And I'm curious if Ritual felt like you had to stretch the movie or cut it down to hit 90. And then with Invader, like one of the best things about doing a film fest where we're dealing with found footage horror, those movies are always around an hour long or an hour 10. And it's not something that I think modern film fans are adverse to. And clearly now the way we engage with movies is different. It's usually at home and streaming. Mm-hmm. So was that like from the original concept, or is your wife just editing the movie and she's like, no, it needs to be short?
Well, I mean, even just like naturally for me, when I see that like a movie is 85 minutes, I'm like, oh, thank God, I'll give it a chance, right? Like,
right,
you know,
yeah.
Like that's already, because I just think that like you said, like we are naturally as film watchers inclined to do that. And with Ritual, like we're just getting towards that. Because, you know, there are very, very, very few directors that I think deserve to do like a 3-hour long movie, right? Like, you know, and even some directors that I'm excited for, when I see that their movie's like almost 3 hours, I'm like, oh, you know. So back when we made Ritual, you know, it was a totally different, you know, kind of deliverable thing. Like it was a totally different world. At one point, like we had to push back against giving them a 35 millimeter print because like that was never going to be in the equation. But it was very much of like that era. So we knew that we had to hit like a 90-minute mark. And debatably, I mean, those are the longest end credits in history. So with this movie, it really was the freedom of being like, it's, you know, it's 2024. Like if we want, the movie's going to come out unrated anyway, so why not just let the movie fall where it's going to fall? And I think at some point we just kind of realized like 70 minutes is the right way to do it, right? Like if we had more to show, we would, or something more compelling that we wanted to add in, it would be in the movie. But 70 minutes was where it landed, and so, and I think that's really like fun, you know. It's like, and that, you know, there's a couple movies that have come out that are that length, and I don't know. I think, you know, if I ever make a 2-hour movie, it's going to be a real surprise.
All right, Evan, you got a quick one?
Yeah. I was going to ask, you know, you were talking about how this movie was sort of run and gun, and like you casted people, 3 or 4 days before you shot it. So that made me wonder how much of this was actually like scripted, because when I was watching it, and like, for context, I'm editing a movie right now that we shot doc style, and we had like 40 something hours of footage.
Oh shit.
And it's mostly just people talking, right? Like, and what I'm trying to get at is all the dialogue in this feels like extremely authentic.
Uh-huh.
I feel like so it made me think, oh well, maybe it is improv, and they, and I know Swanberg sort of has that. A lot of his movies are unscripted or lightly scripted. So I was curious, what was that the case here?
Yeah,
And, like,
this was tremendous. I mean, this was as loose as I've ever done tenfold, right? And so, I don't speak. I'm not a fluent Spanish speaker, so there was an element of having to be like, all right, we know what you're saying, so I can go back when we're editing it, like know exactly how to navigate the subtitles. But other than that, I mean, like. Yeah, like there were things every single day we'd come up with something new, and that whole ending finale sequence we came up with way down the line. And so it just, you obviously have to like have a plan to make sure it's like, oh, I need these cop outfits and I need, his face to get all bludgeoned up. But yeah, it was about as loose as I think it could be, while still, being able to make an actual like a movie that I was happy with cinematically. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
dude,
absolutely.
Totally.
But I would draw,
Mickey,
I would scribble out a lot, and in the Blu-ray extras, you'll see. I basically every night I would draw out like little chicken scratch like ideas of plans and shots that I wanted to get or try to accomplish from there. So roadmaps always, but I couldn't do what Joe does, which is literally like everyone come and we'll just shoot and figure it out.
It'll be a movie when we get done.
Yeah. I mean, he's really good at. He's exceptionally good at doing that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, Mickey, fantastic movie. Invader's out, available now. Everybody should watch it. We are up against it. There's so many things I want to ask you about, like subtitles. You did an artful interpretation with those.
We can go on
locations.
a little longer if you want.
Are you okay?
Sure, yeah.
Can we talk about that? So one of the main things with modern movies is cell phones are a thing you have to deal with. And it's always like, hey, we have an audience and our character's on the phone. What do you do there?
Yeah.
And it's like, people can really get kind of cute and it will fucking tank that movie for me, where I'm just like, God, get the fucking, like half the screen doesn't need to be a phone. And you had a different approach. What's that like? Like, was that your wife in the editing bay, or did you have that in the script?
Yeah, I hate anytime you have to set up a shot to film a cell phone. Like, I just, you try to avoid it as much as physically possible. Cause also, I think this is like one of the only times I've used cell phones in movies, because I've pushed against it for so long, but I'm like, all right, the iPhone's been around as long, longer than I've been making films, so it's time to accept that they're not going anywhere, right? And so so any way that we could avoid it, so that's why we purposely did a lot of like the voiceover of like the GPS and everything. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because hopefully 10 years down the line, people aren't gonna, their focus isn't gonna be like, look at that archaic piece of technology,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or like there's like a CGI glowing phone on the screen so we could get up close.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
there's really loud button.
Yeah.
It's like, come on. I like the way that you approached it, I felt was kind of like a little bit like a House of Leaves or something, where the words, they're delivering a utility to the narrative, but they're also kind of like artful in their own way.
Oh, cool.
And imply an emotion. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that.
Yeah,
another
in terms
one,
of the setting stuff, I think just in general, his movies don't include
I'm not
phones
well versed
and
enough.
stuff.
So I'm really like, we're talking about phones. The only other thing I have to go off with Mickey is like a colorful rotary phone in a hotel room.
Yeah. He's good at not like dating a movie just based on like what is in the scene, like because you got the 50s vibe from Ritual, and that movie's definitely not set in the 50s, but it's just because of that lack of like dating technology, I think.
Yeah.
It feels 50s like a Lynch film does, where there's kind of like a vibe, or like the people are from this older era where romance is high and the betrayal is much deeper, and that's why I referred to it as that. Last, we'll do a couple quick ones.
Okay, yeah, sure, no problem.
When you're talking about location scouting, I have to ask, how did you get an interior shot? Was that back in LA, or like, because we're in a store at one point, did you just roll into a Kroger's or something, be like, hey, can we
Yeah, we
Oh yeah.
we we found this. Well, what was really interesting was that that part of Illinois, they were like, we're done with COVID, right? So like you go to this like strip mall where that grocery store was located, and like inside the gym, everyone was just like running on treadmills with no masks or anything. So we were like, okay, well maybe this area is going to be a little bit more susceptible to letting us film. So we went in there and we, did the whole, hey, could we come film here for a couple hours? And after store hours, they let us go in and do it. So, it was about as real as you possibly could get.
I could imagine a world where Swanberg's like, I got a guy.
Right.
Like we could just roll in there.
Yeah, we literally just like kind of just like showed up and kind of, hey, mister, this is a great store. We're so happy that it's not a big supermarket. This must be family owned, which is all true. And so I think they were a little bit more down to let us film there.
What was the name of the store?
Oh God. I think I don't know if they'd want us to say, so I
Okay. Fair
all right,
enough.
fine. I tried. I know they're listening. I tried to get you a shout out.
They were following all the protocol. I felt bad for the gym next door.
Okay. So last, I'll get killed if we don't mention it. When are we going to get a found footage movie out of you?
Yeah, dude.
Well, I mean,
I know a guy. We'll program it.
Or a faux doc.
Big
He
premiere.
said he loves Punishment Park.
Yeah. I think that would be closer to what I'd end up doing. I just watched Punishment Park again. I was like, man, this is fucking brilliant. And I'm a huge fan of Matt Johnson. I watched The Dirties again.
Hell yeah.
And I think I think it's going to happen. It will definitely be, certainly different in terms of what you'd expect. But I think it would be, I'm totally open to it. Because like I said, I love Louis Theroux so much. And his early documentaries are hugely inspirational to me. And I'd love to check out, come to your guys' fest because that sounds super fun. And I'm a huge fan of found footage movies. So, well,
you absolutely should, dude.
Guess what? You're invited.
Hell yeah.
Next year, in March, we do it every year. I definitely recommend a movie by Richard Perry to you called Base. It's about a base jumper.
Yeah. Cool.
It's a faux doc. It's kind of like a French romance in application, but it's insane.
Cool.
Okay. Well, thanks for hanging. Evan, do you got one more you want to sneak?
I just wanted to tease. Crooks is coming soon.
Yeah.
Mickey. What can you tease that in any way or tell us something fun about that?
Yeah. So it's back to probably as close to it's my most stylized, colorful, back to that kind of element of filmmaking. There are sections in black and white. It's rhythmically, it's a kind of celebration of all these genres of subgenres within crime. It's a straight crime movie. It's not but it's it definitely becomes super violent, and so it's just a fun incredibly musical kind of movie. We're clearing 16 songs or something right now, which is a total
nice.
Which is a total nightmare for me. And so I don't know end up going with the movie because we're at the mercy of figuring out how to clear all this music. So I hope that it's going to come out soon. And then I think I'm going to go back to Chicago and we're working on something new, which is going to come hopefully this year as well.
Hell yeah.
Well, Mickey, you're a hell of a filmmaker. If you haven't checked out his movies, I mean it, highbrow, lowbrow, a fan of the genre without trying to subvert it in some mean way. You really embrace the tropes, and I appreciate it.
Hell yeah.
Mickey, dude, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us.
Thank you. Yeah, this is fun.
Well,
I'm excited
next time you make a movie, come back. We'd love to talk to you about it.
Yeah,
for sure. Maybe Terrell could come hang out for that one.
All right. Well, Mickey, I love you, man.
Love you guys.
Yeah,
too.
be in contact. Anything you got coming out, let us know. We'd love to promote it. And I'm serious. We're in I'm in the Bay Area.
Oh,
that's where we do the film fest every year. So if you want to come north whenever,
hell yeah,
come hang out.
Let's do it.
We'll bring you in.
And I'm in the shed in Mississippi. So if you're Joe ever get ready to shoot something in the dirty South, just give me a shout.
Look, I'm 100% down. All right, later, guys.
All right,
Thank
Mickey.
you so much.
Love you, brother.
All right.
Thanks for listening to Footage Foreplay. If you enjoy the show, please consider leaving a review, sharing it with a friend, or simply hitting like. These small gestures are a great free way to support this mayhem, and if you find some footage we should be fondling, email us at footageforeplay@gmail.com. Check back every Tuesday and Thursday for new episodes, and remember, don't skip the foreplay. Thanks for listening to Footage Foreplay. If you enjoy the show, please consider leaving a review, sharing it with a friend, or simply hitting like. These small gestures are a great free way to support this mayhem, and if you find some footage we should be fondling, email us at footageforeplay@gmail.com. Check back every Tuesday and Thursday for new episodes, and remember, don't skip the foreplay.